Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Hello, everyone. It is 12 o'clock, so welcome to the Pulse Surveys, Why Do They Matter Now More Than Ever webinar. We'll just give everyone a few more seconds to join. So it is a pleasure to be with you today. My name is Veronica Dubois, Talent Management Consultant at EPSI, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. Thank you for being here today. I believe that there are many of you from different regions and that you all have an interest in maintaining and managing employee engagement and how the current situation is affecting our organizations at this time. Before we begin, here are a few technical details. So during the presentation, I will be available in the chat box at the bottom of your screen. And if you have any Q&A questions for Marla, our speaker today, please use the Q&A function that appears at the bottom of the screen next to the chat box. As we begin the webinar today, I will quickly introduce our company EPSI and our mission. EPSI is committed to the 3 E's: evaluate, engage, and evolve. EPSI has 25 years of experience, 1,000 client organizations that are growing alongside us, 200,000 candidates assessed annually, and more than 2 million tests administered. Here's what we do. We evaluate people, assessing potential candidates with renowned psychometric assessment tools through an effective online testing platform. We engage talents, conducting engagement surveys through state-of-the-art online platform to enable organizations with engaging their employee talent. And we evolve organizations, combining our expertise and tools to ensure professional development of organizations' workforces, guiding them to reach the next level. Today, we will focus on the second E, engage talents. On that note, I would like to formally introduce our speaker today, Marla Vega. Marla is an expert on employee engagement. She is passionate about helping organizations to action survey data to improve employee experience and engagement. She has managed employee engagement surveys for a variety of large organizations across a wide range of industries, including private and public sectors. As the manager of EPSI's talent engagement team, Marla leads EPSI's survey business line. She uses her expertise to help organizations design valid and reliable employee surveys, analyze survey results, and provide actionable solutions to achieve higher levels of employee engagement and better business results. Over to you, Marla.
Thank you so much, Veronica, and thank you very much, everyone, for being here today. I hope that all of you are in the comfort of your home, maybe with a nice cup of coffee or a nice cup of tea, and ready to learn about employee engagement and pulse surveys. So right now we're living significant workplace transformations, and what I really would like to do today is inspire you and give you some ideas on how you can get employee engagement in your organization to the next level. So with that in mind, I divided the webinar today in 3 main sections that I would like to cover with you today. The first one is why. So why employee engagement matters and how pulse surveys can help you with that. The second aspect is actually what. So what are some of the most common topics that we can cover about pulse surveys? And finally, we have the how component. So how to create an employee engagement strategy for your own organization. So after we look at that, why engagement matters, what can we actually measure through pulse surveys? And in this particular part, I think it's going to be very interesting because I have some good data to show you and sample questions and things that we've done with our clients. So I think you really like that part. But after we see that, you might be left wondering, and how do I implement a pulse survey? And that's exactly what we're going to see in the third part. So with that in mind, let's get started. So why engagement now? So with so many priorities in mind and considerable financial setbacks that companies are currently facing, why should we care about employee engagement? And Many of you listening to this webinar today are HR leaders, and you're in the HR community. And I know from talking to a lot of you, to our clients, and a lot of my HR contacts, that some of the HR managers, VP of HR, Director of HR, have actually been having a lot of difficulties explaining to senior leadership and executives of why engagement matters during these times where there seem to me to be so many other things that matter. And there's an obvious reason of why engagement is important right now. And that reason is the moral aspect. So obviously we care about people, and that's something that I hope that most of you listening today do, and I'm sure you do because that's why you're listening to this webinar. But what I want to do today with you is to actually spend a little bit more time on the business aspect of why employee engagement matters. And first, let's start with some background. In the last couple of months, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we've lived one of the biggest business transformation in the world in decades. And some of the changes that we've seen are an increasing workforce. I mean, before COVID-19, a lot of organizations were working remotely already. Some organizations were still trying to figure out, is this good for the organization or not? Maybe employees could work a couple of days from home, other employees not. But what COVID-19 did, it really accelerated this work from home situation to the point where most of the employees that can work from home are actually doing so right now. And this is pretty amazing. We have also looked at some significant digital transformation that we're living in right now. So we've really embraced technology to the full extent. So right now we're using all the technology that's out there to be able to connect with our colleagues, with our clients, and with everyone. But so these are very positive things that have happened. We also have on the less fortunate side that there's things that layoffs have happened to. So some companies have had to lay off some of their employees. So for example, we see like some of our friends, colleagues, even some family members that have been laid off, and this has caused like some stress and not very good feelings. There's also those in the front line, so those essential workers that have been working to really provide us the services, but they're putting their safety at risk, so they're facing other types of issues. And how about HR? So those of you in the call today, I'm sure a lot of you are HR folks. So that what I hear from our HR contacts is they're busier than ever. So the HR departments are really busy with all the change that's happening. But I don't want to bore you with all these because we've all been listening to the news. We're all experiencing all these. So these are things that we know. And there's much more that's been happening. But what I really want you to think about is all of this that's taking place right now. What is actually the impact on your employees and your organization? And interestingly enough, when it comes to the impact on engagement on organization, it's been a surprise that actually employee engagement levels have drastically improved and increased. And why is this? Well, a lot of companies, first of all, have done a fantastic job enabling their employees to work remotely, and they've done this faster than ever before. So overnight, a huge amount of the workforce is working from home. Also, leaders throughout the crisis have been very empathetic. They've been showing support and understanding their employees, asking questions like, how are you feeling? Do you need help with your childcare situation or any health issues? So employees have really appreciated this, and this has increased employee engagement. I wanted to tell you a story because a lot of our clients are, before they conduct a survey, so I usually have a lot of conversations with our clients. And what I've been hearing since the start of the survey is as soon as companies starting actioning a lot of these things and adapting to change, what I would hear from HR is that we actually think that employee engagement has increased in our organization. And as soon as we conduct the surveys, results are showing that. In particular, I put here one of the examples. So I pick one of the organizations that we've been working with this client of ours for many years now, I think since 2015 or 2016. And they conduct in April every year their employee engagement survey. And last year, they conducted in April 2019. And when April arrived this year, imagine it was right when so the crisis had almost started. So in March and April was, should we even conduct the survey? But our clients really wanted to listen to their employees. And as you can see here, I'm presenting you the results of their survey. And we were so surprised. Wow, engagement actually increased 92%. So it means that 92% of their employees are engaged compared to 77% last year, which means a 15% increase. So a double-digit increase in just 1 year. And what we know through the verbatim comments of the survey is that yes, part of the increase of the engagement in this organization that I'm talking to you about was related to the action plans that were implemented as a result of the 2019 employee engagement survey. But another percentage was related to the crisis itself. And why? Because employees were saying that they were so appreciative of how the organization or their leaders adapted to the crisis and how they were supporting the employees. So something that I want you to remember today is that this increase in employee engagement is what actually is going to help companies come out stronger of this crisis. And let me explain you why. So this theory that I'm going to present is the basis of employee engagement, and many of you may know, but it's always good to have a refresher. So engaged employees, so happy employees, are usually more innovative, they're more productive, they offer better customer service, they're willing to work more digitally, and they're willing to go the extra mile. So they're willing to apply the discretionary effort that, in other words, is employee engagement. What this causes in turn is that this increases the business outcomes. So better business outcomes during these times are really critical because we're all expecting to go into a recession as a result of the crisis. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that our organization comes out of the crisis as a leader in our industry. And the way that we can do that is with our employees. You will notice here how I particularly listed innovation as the first item of how engaged employees behave. So they're more innovative. And I did this specifically because innovation is a key factor to help organizations become stronger. There isn't that much that we can do about the crisis itself. I mean, we cannot really do much about the impact that it has had in our organizations. However, there is a lot that we can do during this time to strengthen our companies, to innovate new products and services, to get out of the crisis stronger. So this, right now you might be thinking, well, we're talking about innovation. This requires a lot of investments. Not a lot of budget right now for that. But when I talked about innovation, I'm not only referring to huge R&D investments, but instead use your people. Use your people to innovate, get their ideas, improve processes, customer service, brand awareness. To conclude this, I would like to say something and to remember for the remaining of the webinar, and is that many things are changing now in our workplace and in our society. But what's important is to think about how do we take all that change and turn those challenges into opportunities. So with that, I would like to then cover the purpose of why we're here today, mainly to talk about pulse surveys. So now we know that engagement matters. So I just showed you that. But how can pulse surveys help with that in particular? And there's many reasons. So there's many reasons why pulse surveys are beneficial. But I've picked the 5 main reasons about how pulse surveys can help. And I think they're more relevant right now with what we're going through. So the first one, I would like to start with data. So during times of workplace transformation that we're currently experiencing, it is inevitable that we're going to be making many decisions. And it's important that we're able to back these decisions with data. So collecting data through surveys doesn't only make you make better decisions, but it also helps you to understand your employee needs. For example, do you know right now what are the greatest concerns that your employees in your organizations have? Or do you know if employees are going through any mental health issues? Are they experiencing stress or anxiety as a result of the crisis? Or do a lot of employees, for example, we're hearing in the HR community right now that there is a lot of talk about flexibility. Employees want more flexible workplaces. What does that look like for your particular organization? So questions like this are the ones that can help you answer, surveys can help you really answer questions like these to give you data to make you successful and make the right decisions. The second benefit of pulse surveys has to do with the fact that they are agile. So pulse surveys are substantially easier to implement, and they're also less costly. So what this does is it allows us to conduct these surveys in a more frequent basis. And conducting this regular check-in with employees allow us to find out any potential issues very quickly and act on them very, very quickly as well. So I'll give you an example. So here, this is an example of a survey that we conducted at the beginning when this crisis started. And the organization wanted to know if their employees had what they need to work remotely, how they were feeling working remotely. It was something so new that it was really important to know. So they were asked questions whether they had the materials and equipment, whether their team were working well virtually with their teams, whether the support was offered, the organization was offering support. And most of the questions had really high percentage favorable, so the scores were really good. However, the organization, asking the right questions, was able to pinpoint one area in which less than half of the organizations was not feeling that they had the ergonomic setup at home to do their work efficiently. So these pulse surveys enable the organization to really quickly and really agile be able to provide the employees with work from home kits with their monitors and their work shares and so on to enable the employees to do their work at home. The next point I would like to talk about is the better link between action and results. So pulse surveys provide us, they're able to connect the actions that we're taking with the results that we see. And to explain that, let us look at a survey process at a high level. So first of all, we ask feedback to employees. So this is when we're asking the survey, when we're asking questions to employees, and employees complete the surveys, hopefully now maybe even from their home and their couch even sometimes. Then we analyze the survey results. So we take all that data from the employees and we analyze the results. And with that data, what we do is we implement action. So we conduct an action plan. But what happened is that traditionally, surveys that were happening annually or even biannually, the action plans, it was hard to connect the actions to the results because a long time would take place between the time that the action was implemented to the time that we're following up. But what happens now is with pulse surveys, we're actually able to follow up shortly after the actions are implemented. So we're really able to see whether that action increase or decrease engagement and whether what we did was good or not. And what this enables organizations to do and managers is that they actually can adjust their action plans accordingly. So they can get validation. Is it what I'm doing? Is my effort that I'm working on, the investment that I'm putting in to make our employees feel better, is it actually working or not? And it's better to find this sooner through pulse surveys that are conducted regularly than to wait a long period of time. And the reason I'm mentioning it right now is because this is particularly true right now through massive transformation that we're living in, where a lot of change will happen. The next point is that pulse surveys are an open line of communication between employees and managers. And I don't know about you, but thinking about the last time that I was at the office, it feels like it's a long time ago, so I don't remember very well. But if we make an effort and really try to remember, we can see that what you see in the image in the screen. So our workplaces, how they used to look like, were a lot of them open concepts where managers would be able to walk through the offices, ask employees how they were feeling, how they were doing. The same apply the other way around, where employees could knock on the manager's office A lot of managers kept their doors open, listening to employees' concerns or needs. But right now, it's not like that. A lot of organizations, the reality right now is that we're working from home. So this is a picture or an image that we see a lot in LinkedIn, in social media, where employees are working at home, sometimes with their kids, even their dogs, their cats, their families. But what's critical about this is that we're all working, we're making an effort, and we're really doing a great job connecting virtually. But it's really not the same way of communicating than when we were at the office. Like, I think back when, even in our own office at EPSI, in the morning we would go for a coffee, we would hear employees say, this week I'm very slow, or other employees say, this week I have so many projects, I'm stressed with a lot of deliverables. So this is giving managers an idea of what's happening, but we don't have that right now. And what's important about this is that surveys, so the way that surveys can help with this is two ways. So one is surveys are a way for managers to listen to their employees and ask this feedback while they're not seeing their employees face to face. And most importantly, it's also the other way around. Surveys are a tool for employees to share their feedback in a confidential way, especially right now when there's so much important feedback to be shared. And with that, I get to my final point of why pulse surveys are beneficial before we move to the next part of the webinar. And this is actually my favorite point, and it's let employees know that you care. So what I mean by this is that conducting regular surveys and listening to your employees on a regular basis, it lets them know that you care. It lets them know that you as a manager care about their feedback, what they have to say, and value their input. So what this does in turn is that pulse surveys on their own, they help to boost employee engagement. Of course, we can not only answer per survey, it's important also to act on the results, but we'll cover that a little bit later today. So with that in mind, so we cover, as I mentioned, the first section of this webinar, and this is about why engagement matters and why pulse surveys in particular can help with that. But now you might be really curious and about actually what kind of things can I ask in a pulse survey? What are some of the common pulse survey topics? And essentially a pulse survey can cover anything. So I could go on and on what pulse surveys can cover. And actually, if there is something in particular that you'd like to see in upcoming webinars, feel free to let us know in the chat. But in particular today, I'm going to be covering 4 main topics that pulse surveys can cover. But to be able to understand these topics, I would like us first to start looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And a lot of you in the call today, if not all of you, are probably familiar with this. And what I want to look at here is, let's start at the bottom with the basic needs. So these are psychological needs and safety needs. And when this translates to the workplace, these are things like working conditions, mental health, safety at work, am I getting hurt or sick at work, professional security, am I going to lose my job, access to resources, equipment, and things like that. So the theory is that until employees are able to meet these basic needs, they're not able to move to higher levels. So levels at the top of the pyramid that we're going to look at in a second. But what happened with COVID-19 is a lot of these basic needs were affected. So organizations and managers, they had to act very quickly to enable employees to be able to do their job and feel secure at work. And this is to be able to allow employees to move to the next level, which is essentially the psychological needs. And what psychological needs are, when we think about the workplace, these are the relationship with your coworkers, relationship with your managers. They're the feeling of accomplishment. So let me ask you a question. Do you have a friend at work? This is a question that some of you that conduct pulse surveys very frequently know that this matters, because research has shown that people that have friends at work, they're actually more engaged. But it's not only until we meet the basic needs and the psychological needs that we get to the top of the pyramid. And to the top of the pyramid. And that here, it's really where employees get to the self-actualization level. And this is where employee engagement happens. So this is where employees are working at their full potential. This is where innovation, growth, and productivity takes place. So we really, the conclusion of this is that we really want to make sure that we cover all the bottom here in the pyramid. So those basic needs, the psychological needs, to really get those employees to work at their best. So what I'll do today is I wanted to look, as I mentioned, at some of the topics and some of the basic needs that have been affected because of the situation that we're living in. And the first one I would like to cover is mental health, which is a topic that has been of increasing interest for many, well, for a few years now. I wouldn't say many, but a few years. And a lot of organizations, there's more awareness about mental health. And even though there's still a lot of stigma around it, organizations are understanding that mental health actually has a relationship with engagement, and it's really important. But what happened as a result of COVID-19 is that right now it's normal to feel anxious, to feel stressed, because there's a crisis, there's a pandemic, there's so much change. So we're expecting mental health issues to rise because of this. So it's interesting that I've gathered some data here for you that I would like to show you. And KMH, the Center of Addiction and Mental Health, actually conducted a national survey here in Canada between May 8th and May 12th, asking respondents and asking Canadians how they were feeling with respect to different mental health issues. And the data that came out of the survey is really impressive. So I would like to show you here first that 25.5% of respondents experienced moderate to severe anxiety in the last few weeks, while 23.7% engaged in binge drinking, 23.2% felt lonely, and 20.4% felt depressed. So these numbers are pretty significant. And while it's not the majority of respondents feeling like that, it's still important to look at this percentage of the population that's feeling that way. And the question for you is now, do you know if your employees are in these percentages? Do you know if your employees are experiencing these due to the crisis in general mental health? Well, you can start a dialogue, and that's where the surveys come in. The surveys can help you ask questions like, my workplace offers the support I need for my psychological and mental health. Or I can talk to my supervisor about the amount of work that I have. How about supervisors? Do they have what they need to be able to support employees with mental health issues? Or are organizations providing benefits related to mental health? So these are all questions, and what I've put here in the slides are questions that you can see that we usually ask in the surveys. So in particular, I wanted to show you some interesting data. And some of you here listening today might know that the Government of Canada conducts an annual employee engagement survey for the public sector employees. And I wanted to show you the results of their 2019 employee engagement survey related to workplace well-being. And some of the results, for example, we see here the first question, I would describe my workplace as being psychologically healthy. So 61% of employees responded favorably to this question. But what this tells us is that almost 40% of employees did not. So almost 40% of public service employees do not feel that their workplace is psychologically healthy. Other things like, for example, half of the workforce feels that their workload is low or very low, which means that the other half of the workforce feels that their work-related stress, is either moderate, high, or very high. So, we're talking about big numbers here. But what's really interesting that I also thought that it might interest you is actually that employees are perceiving that their departments are doing a good job at raising awareness about mental health. So this was as high as 73%. And what's also very interesting is that we can see how these numbers have been increasing year over year. So in 2017, 67% responded favorably compared to 73% now, which for such a large sample is significant. But while we see that there is awareness, there's also issues that need to be addressed. And something else that was collected through the survey that I wanted to share with you is employees actually said, what are the causes that are causing these mental health issues and stress at work? So I wanted to show you because this gives you an idea of things that you can do. So employees are saying that what's causing them stress is not enough employees to do the work, heavy workloads, competing or constant changing priorities, unreasonable deadlines, balancing work and personal life, and pay or compensation related matters. And well, that part is mostly like for the federal government and their pay issues. But what this really tells us is that once we ask the questions in the survey and we get the data from the employees, we can really understand if any of these are issues for our employees, so we can act on them and solve them. So with that, I'd like to go to the next point, which is not going to be a surprise for many of you, and this is about working remotely. So this is one of the first pulse surveys that all organizations wanted to conduct as soon as the COVID-19 started. And this is because leaders really wanted to understand how their employees were feeling and if they were enabled to do their job at home. And here we refer back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs that we saw a couple of slides ago. If the basic things are not met, if I don't have what I need to be able to do the job, if I don't feel secure, I'm not going to be able to move to the next level to feel engaged. So we see back here the example that we looked earlier, where there are questions, there are surveys like this, where it gives us this type of data, that quantitative data that can tell us a lot of information about our employees. But I wanted to show you as well that we can as well get qualitative data, so verbatim comments that are so critical and really get us to understand what employees are really feeling. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a flavor on some of the results that we've gotten from surveys. So here is some actual comments that we've got from recent surveys we've conducted. One of them says, in this age of remote working, some team building events would go a long way towards a feeling of belonging. I am not sure how it could be done, but I do feel the need for something along those lines. There's also comments like, I would be able to perform my job more efficiently and in a more ergonomic way if I had access to my work chair, second computer monitor, and a phone. So these just give you a flavor. But a lot of you might be thinking right now, well, all my employees are working well remotely, everything's good. Yes, a lot of organizations have done a very good job at, ensuring all their employees have what their needs. I know other organizations are still struggling with that, so for surveys like these will be helpful for those organizations still struggling. But we also need to think about the future. And the future is just around the corner. So a lot of us think that the remote work will become the new normal. But think about that we're still humans. We still need our human interaction. So even though remote work will become the new normal, I don't think we'll just be at home all the time as isolated forever. That's not good. So a lot of questions come in mind when we think about that. So for example, when I'm thinking about the office, I think maybe our workplace right now is just going to become a social place. Like, I don't see myself just going to the office and just working on my laptop and just working on my computer on my own. I can do that at home. I can do that, at home at the time that I want, when I feel productive and all that. But what I really need, and when I think workplaces are going to become, is a place for social interaction, a place where employees can truly collaborate with each other, when they do face-to-face meetings and get together. But as these things are changing, all surveys about working remotely and the transition back to work are going to be really important. And with that, I would like to get to a next point, and this is about senior leadership and vision. So this is another big topic that can be covered through surveys. And this is not so much as a basic need in the Maslows hierarchies of needs that we covered in the two previous points, but it is important for me to cover these because because senior leadership and vision has been really proven to be a key driver of employee engagement. We need leaders to guide us through change. We need leaders to inspire us and provide us with a vision of where the company is going. Actually, our CEO, Andre Durivage, delivered a webinar about leadership a couple of weeks ago. So if some of you might want to go a little bit deeper and learn a little bit more about this, feel free to let me know or let us know through the chat box or send us an email, and we'll be happy to share this webinar with you. But today what I'm going to do, so I'm not going to go as in depth because we have that additional piece of content, but I wanted to show you something. So a lot of the clients that are on the call today will recognize this. And this is our engagement model here at EPSI. So here you can see how the leadership index on the left-hand side of the model is what impacts the organizational index. And the organizational index is essentially the organizational climate and work facilitation. So that enablement that we've been talking about throughout the webinar. And this in turn is what impacts engagement and employee experience and provides better performance. So what this tells us is that leadership is actually what's driving all of this, and it's really important. And here, okay, don't get scared with this graph, like I will explain it very shortly. It's very simple, actually. I want to show you here how, so we do a lot of surveys for our clients, and we do these quad maps to help us analyze the data. So to explain here, the circles represent the different items that we measure in the survey. So you can see different items there, and then we plot them based on the relationship to engagement. So the more the item is toward the right, it means that this item has a higher relationship with engagement. So the more you work on these, the higher the engagement will be. So they're strongly correlated. And items that are towards the left are items that are less related to engagement. And what's interesting about this also is that we color the items. So you can see that senior leadership and immediate supervisor are blue. And what we actually see very interesting is that most of those blue colors, we see them in the right-hand side, which really show how senior leadership and immediate managers are a key driver of employee engagement. And it's really important right now. So it's things like initiating change, inspiring employees, having honest and open communication, promoting innovation, and acting consistently. These are things that senior leaders can do to ensure that they're promoting engagement in their organizations. With that, I didn't want to finish without talking about a very popular survey that we've been hearing about. And a lot of clients have been requesting. A lot of clients want to know what they can ask employees about returning to the workplace. So like you see here, this is a screenshot from one of the surveys that we have. Do employees feel safe? Do employees have they need any special accommodation about health issues or childcare? And what's interesting about this is I got some data here for you, and a recent survey conducted earlier this year shows that 54% of workers would actually leave their current job for one that would offer remote, that would allow them to work remotely. At the same time, a lot of companies are realizing that working remotely is actually profitable. Here I have a quote from from Kate Lister, the president of Global and Workplace Analytics, who said that a typical employer can save about $100,000 a year for every person who works remotely half of the time. This is a pretty significant number, and I think a lot of organizations are going to be thinking of that. And as I said before, employees at the same time miss the face-to-face. They want more flexibility. So really, this is all going to transform our workplaces. And these returning to work pulse surveys can really help you to understand the data of what's happening and what employees need during these times. So we're reaching close to the end of the webinar, but before I finish, I really want to cover a third section. It's not as long as the previous ones, but I think it's important. And so we cover why engagement matters, and we cover some of the main topics and relevant topics that I see right now when it comes to pulse surveys. But right now, might really be left wondering, how do I implement a pulse survey? So with that, we have to think, I want to ask the question, or actually, you probably are asking me the question, what is the right pulse survey strategy for my organization? And the answer to that depends on a few factors. And the first one is always the most important. Always start with your objective. What is it that you're trying to accomplish? What is it that you want to achieve by conducting these pulse surveys? Do you have any specific concerns that you'd like to measure? Is it that you'd like to track any change from previous surveys that you've conducted, or that you would like to compare your results to others in your industry? Defining the objectives of the pulse surveys are extremely important, because we cannot just conduct a pulse survey just to conduct it and ask questions just because we're saying that this is helpful, this is self-created engagement. We actually need to know what we want to do to be able to act on that, and we need to ask things that we can act on. The second point is always think about previous surveys that you've conducted. So pulse survey is a strategy, so they're all connected one to the other. So it's not one pulse survey is not connected to the next. So always think what you've asked in the past, have you acted on those results? So that is really important. And also consider fluctuation. So what I mean by this is how likely the topics of interest are likely to fluctuate. And what this means is that things like engagement, for example, usually engagement doesn't fluctuate that often. And we see that in a lot of benchmark data. So when we recalculate benchmarks year over year, we see that engagement usually fluctuates 1 or 2%, but not much more than that. Although with some drastic changes like we saw before, like a COVID-19 crisis, engagement might really, really shift, but it's not usually the case. On the other hand, there are topics that are actually more likely to fluctuate. So you really need to consider that when you're thinking what type of questions to ask in the survey. And finally, and really important, is that always think about the context and the unique characteristics of your own organization. So this is critical. It's very important that you always consider your unique needs. For example, we know that federal employees are still, some of them having technological issues that might be very unique to that. We have essential workers who are more worried about their safety. Maybe those working from home are not so much. And for example, some private sector have experienced some layoffs. So really think about that when your own unique needs when you're designing and thinking about surveys and your pulse survey strategy. And so once we have the strategy, what we do next is we implement a pulse survey. And this part is the simple part. So what I wanted to do is to show you quickly what are the steps that we do to implement a pulse survey. So the first one is, like we mentioned before, is to determine the objectives. So this is really important. I just covered it in the previous slide. Then with those objectives, we design the survey. So usually pulse surveys are between 5 to 15 questions. So they're really short and concise. And thanks to the technology, then we move to the third step where we integrate the survey and employee data. And really technology allows us to do this in a very simple way, enabling us to launch the survey very quickly and have those employees in their smartphones, in their tablets, their computer, answering and giving us their feedback, which allows us to report on it. But what's really nice about pulse surveys is that we can do agile reporting. So technology enables us once more to really report on that right away. So the survey closes and you get your data. And then you're able to act on that data really, really fast after you receive the results. And with that part, I would really like to end this webinar on that point, saying that, so we've talked about a lot of things that pulse surveys can benefit. And we've actually even said that pulse surveys can help you boost engagement in your organization. But what's really most important is that step number 6 that you see in this roadmap, and is to act on the results. So you can ask the question many times, but if you don't act on the results, your engagement levels could actually suffer. So with that, and before we move to the Q&A, I would just like to summarize very quickly what we saw today. And first, we looked at why engagement matters and how pulse surveys help. So in here, we looked at an engaged workforce, it's a more productive workforce. They offer better customer service, they're willing to go the extra mile, and they're more innovative. Innovation in particular is critical during these times to allow organizations to get out of the crisis stronger than their competition. We also looked at 5 ways pulse surveys can help us. So one was enabling organizations to make data-driven decisions, providing agility in resolving potential issues, allowing to better link action and results. They're also an open line of communication between employees and managers, and they're a way to show your employees that you care. The second one, we look at what. So we look what can be measured through pulse surveys, and particularly we look at 4 topics. So the first one, we look at mental health awareness as an issue that has been on the rise even before COVID-19, but we talked how because of the crisis, there's a lot of people that are stressed and anxious, so we expect mental health issues to rise. We also talk about the importance of enabling employees to work remotely to keep their productivity. We talked about leadership and vision as a key driver of employee engagement, and this is important right now more than ever during transformation and change. And finally, we talked about returning to the workplace pulse surveys as being really popular. Finally, we looked at how. So how we can create and implement pulse surveys. So we looked at some tips on how to create a pulse survey strategy for your organizations. So to look at objective, previous surveys, how likely are the topics that you're measuring to fluctuate, and what are the unique needs and characteristics of your own organizations. And finally, we look at the steps to implement a pulse surveys and concluded that while implementing a pulse survey is relatively simple, we need to be aware that what's most important is to act on the results. And with that, I thank you all very, very much for being here today, and I'll stop here and see what questions do you have.
Thank you so much for that, Marla. That was really interesting and really important. Thank you. So we do have one question here. So they're asking, how often should pulse surveys be conducted? And if it's too often, would they cause survey fatigue?
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for the question. And this is actually a great question to ask. And I would like to start by saying that, so pulse surveys really, a lot of people are worried about survey fatigue. And this is something that has been talked about for many years now, that, surveying employees too frequently might cause fatigue. But the nice thing about pulse surveys is that they're short and they're very concise. So it only takes 1 or 2 minutes for employees. So it's very, very easy for employees to answer these surveys. So what we need to think here is, if organizations really act on the results that we just talked about previously and listen to their employees, show them that you're listening, pulse surveys can actually be an excitement for employees to know that this is a way for them to express themselves and to get heard. So what I would say about these, so to answer the question, is that how often should pulse surveys be conducted, is it really depends on the strategy that you choose for your organization. So some people conduct pulse surveys on a quarterly basis, some people do it more often on a monthly basis. But what's really important is to act on the results so that your employees don't get tired and don't get that survey fatigue of answering questions over and over, but they don't really see results. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. It is really coming down to acting on the results. At the beginning, you had talked about how just the act of doing a pulse survey, it really does show employees that the employer cares, that they're interested in what the employees have to say. We're really lucky working at EPSI that we get to do that. We get to participate in those kinds of surveys. And at the end of the day, like you mentioned, it's the actions that come from the data that they get from the survey that really make the biggest difference. I do have one more anonymous question here, and if anyone else wants to jump in on the Q&A there and leave a question, I welcome you to do that. So the last question that I have for now is, how about comprehensive annual engagement surveys? Is this a good time to conduct an overall annual survey?
Oh, that's another excellent question. And it's interesting because it's actually, this question, we've heard it a lot from our clients too, that is this a good time to conduct our annual engagement survey? With that, let me, I'd like to start by saying that annual surveys, when we started this crisis, a lot of companies, this was the first question that they had. So we were working on projects and we were working on surveys that we were ready to launch. And as soon as the crisis happened, the advice that we gave our clients was, you know what, maybe it's a good moment to just stop this initiative shortly, like just temporarily, just to look at, because there's many other priorities. And it might seem insensitive to employees that employers are just conducting the same annual traditional survey that they've done in the past, like if nothing else were happening, when there's so many things that were happening at that moment. But what happened after that is that we adapted extremely quickly to all these situations. So for a lot of us, the surveys have become the new, sorry, not the surveys, but working remotely and the situation that we're living in has become the new normal. So, and because organizations, like we saw in the presentation, have done an amazing job adapting to this situation, right now, it's okay to do a pulse survey. Employees are already feeling normal, and I mean, not a pulse survey, I think I have that in mind from all the webinar, but it's okay to do the annual engagement survey. Why? Because it will tell employees that that the organization is still doing their job, that things are still going well. In the annual engagement surveys though, what I would recommend is to, you might want to, when doing annual engagement surveys, to look at those results, look at the questions, and really think about if there's something that you would like to change, perhaps, to really adapt to the situation, or if there's some new topics that might be important to include. Just always make sure that the survey is not too long. But things like what we saw, mental health might be a good topic to include, or leadership and vision. Most full annual engagement surveys is already there, but you might be looking at some particular things that leaders want to measure during this time. So for example, leaders' adaptability to crisis management and change management. So yes, essentially what the answer is that I would recommend that yes, to continue doing annual engagement surveys, especially if you already had them scheduled for a particular time. We actually have some surveys live right now that there are annual engagement surveys, and our clients are conducting them. And employee the response rates are being really high, and we have seen really good results. So yes, I encourage all of you thinking of that to continue with your employee engagement strategy.
Thank you, Marla. I know that engagement surveys, annual ones would be a whole separate webinar. Maybe just quickly, if you could, just in one or two sentences, could you kind of explain for someone who maybe doesn't know, what is the main difference between an annual engagement survey and a pulse survey?
Excellent. Yeah. So essentially, what the biggest difference is in terms of we have different aspects. So the first one is frequency. So that we covered today. So pulse surveys are conducted more frequently, and annual surveys, we call them annual surveys, but some clients actually even conduct them like every 2 years. So they're not asked as frequently. The other big difference, and this is really big, is the length of the survey. So pulse surveys are really short, so they're quick. So you get them sometimes even in your smartphone, and you're like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions done, and I gave my feedback. Some pulse surveys are even one question, and that's a little bit, on the other end of the spectrum. But what annual surveys are they're longer. So they're really, they're very beneficial actually, because they cover a lot of topics. So they cover all the potential drivers of engagement. And I don't discourage to do annual employee engagement surveys. I actually think that having a strategy, your engagement strategy, can include annual employee engagement surveys and pulse surveys, because they have different ways of looking at the data. So annual surveys give you more information, but they also, on the other side, they take more time to analyze, more time to act on those action plans and prepare the results, and they're also more costly to implement. So I think that those are the main differences.
Yeah, so it sounds like, there are so many opportunities to really customize the survey for the industry and for the specific organization. And there's so many different variables depending on what kind of positions the employees are in. So I definitely recommend, getting in touch with Marla. So I did just put Marla's email in our chat box. If anyone has any specific questions, Marla is our survey guru, so she'll be able to help you with that. And I don't see any other questions in our Q&A, so we're going to wrap up for today. So thank you again so much, Marla, for providing all this information, and thank you to everyone who was able to attend. We know that pulse surveys can support you in navigating this new normal that we're all in, and with any new challenges as well. So if you would like to get in touch, you can email Marla, and if you have any questions about EPSI in general and our testing assessments and anything about that, you can definitely get in touch with me as well. I put my email in the chat box, and I look forward to connecting with you. So if you know any other professionals who might be interested in this training, the webinar has been recorded and we'll be making it available on our social media, and we'll be sending an email later today with the replay link. Also next week, same time, same day, it'll be next Friday, we will be delivering this webinar in French, so feel free to invite your French contacts. And actually at the end of the month, we have an English webinar about emotional intelligence with our company president, Andre Derivac. So definitely stay tuned to our social media, subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on LinkedIn, and you'll be sure to stay informed about that one. And before signing off, if I may be so bold as to quote Roy Rogers by saying, happy trails, and remember, we're in this together. Thank you, and have a wonderful weekend, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.